king of German mercenaries.
Chapter 165 Angela's Little Thoughts. After returning to Denberg Castle, Marin rested for 3 consecutive days, getting up at noon every day. It was really tiring to be on the road for nearly half a year. In addition to physical fatigue, there was also mental fatigue. Fortunately, everything was over, and Marin gave himself 3 days off. For 3 days, Marin slept all day and spent time with his family and Angela. Marin seemed to realize that the old Hoffman couple looked down on Angela. It was not that they thought Angela was not pretty enough, but that they thought Angela was of a low status. Generally speaking, whether in ancient China or ancient Europe, people paid great attention to the matching of family backgrounds. Of course, after the rise of the imperial examination system in ancient China, this situation has changed to a certain extent. For example, some wealthy families would marry their daughters to some scholars who were good at studying and could pass the imperial examinations. However, this is also a disguised matching of family backgrounds. Because some scholars of humble origins, if they are good enough in the imperial examinations, can also become high-ranking officials in the future, and can still match those high-ranking officials in the future. In Europe, the situation was even more serious. Generally, the king's marriage partner was a princess from another country, and he would not choose the daughter of a duke or marquis in his own country. Of course, there were also marriages between kings and some dukes. However, those dukes were all dukes of autonomous duchies, equivalent to the kings of small countries. As for those dukes without independent territories, they were not qualified to marry into the royal family. Only a few daughters of the former British King Edward IV, except the eldest daughter, married domestic dukes and earls because the Tudor dynasty replaced the York dynasty. Because these princesses were basically princesses of the previous dynasty, their glory was gone, and no princes from other countries were willing to marry them. Marin is now a baron of an autonomous barony. Although he is a lower-level noble, there is a gap between lower-level nobles. For example, although the knight class is only 1 level lower than the baron, the difference is huge. Because the baron can be inherited, but the knight must be re-ennobled every generation. If a generation of knights does not meet the requirements of the lord above, they may not be able to be ennobled. Therefore, the baron class is completely incomparable to the knight class. Generally speaking, autonomous barons like Marin are still quite popular. You know, baronies are generally not autonomous, but subordinate to dukes and earls. And many children of baron families have to serve as guards or officials in the courts of dukes or earls to assist dukes or earls. According to convention, the heirs of these barons often become subordinate officials of those dukes or earls. And those sons of barons who have no inheritance rights start as guards. If they are capable, they will be granted official positions, and if they are not capable, they will continue to be guards. But generally, these sons of barons who are guards can often get the title of formal knights after a long time, but they have no fiefdom, unless they are very good guards and get to the level of captain. The daughters of barons usually marry barons or baron heirs. Of course, there are also cases where baron daughters marry the sons of dukes or earls who do not have the right of inheritance. Generally speaking, this is because the baron's daughter is too beautiful, or the baron is very capable and has become an important official in the duchy or earldom. Moreover, the sons of dukes and earls who do not have the right of inheritance, although they have a high status, are not much better than barons. In fact, if they do not get fiefs, they are not as good as barons with territories. Therefore, marrying a baron's daughter is not too surprising. However, it is unlikely for a baron to marry the daughter of a duke or earl, because the daughters of dukes and earls usually marry great nobles or heirs of great nobles of equal status, and it is rare for a duke or earl's daughter to marry a baron. In addition, princesses are also very popular. Therefore, generally barons or baron heirs would marry the daughters of barons of the same level. The old Hoffman couple obviously thought so too, so they looked down on Angela, who came from a poor knight family. Although Angela was beautiful and well-behaved, due to their strong sense of family background, the old Hoffman couple looked down on Angela and felt that she was not worthy of Marin. Marin also saw this, but he didn't say anything. After all, the old Hoffman couple didn't stay here all the time, so they could think whatever they wanted. Besides, Marin couldn't tell the old Hoffman couple that this is the family of the future pope. Therefore, Marin planned to find a way to make the old Hoffman couple accept Angela after a while. After all, the old Hoffman couple must be present and approve of Marin's marriage. Angela was not stupid either, she seemed to have thought of the possibility of marrying Marin. To be honest, she lived a very comfortable life in Denberg. At least, it was much better than her previous days of fleeing in Italy. Moreover, Marin was very good to her. He not only fully satisfied her materially, letting her eat delicious Chinese food and wear beautiful clothes every day, but also often told her good stories, making her very happy every day. If possible, Angela hoped to live like this every day. However, Marin went out for several days to do things, which made Angela very lonely and anxious. Because, although the maids in the castle served her attentively, no one could make her happy every day like Marin. It was because of Marin's departure that the family suddenly realized how important Marin was to her. As the daughter of Archbishop Rovere, who is good at conspiracy, Angela is not a foolish woman who has no strategy at all. It's just that Archbishop Rovere protected her too well before, which led to her simple personality. But after experiencing the terrible experience of almost falling into the hands of the enemy and being killed last time, Angela seems to have awakened some talents. She knew that the old Hoffmans might be her future parents-in-law. Although the old Hoffmans usually lived in Hoffman Manor and were not with Marin, if she wanted to marry Marin, she had to get the approval of the old Hoffmans. Angela didn't have to marry Marin, but she clearly understood that under the current circumstances, marrying Marin was probably her best choice. As the illegitimate daughter of a bishop who was hunted by the Pope, Angela's identity was not public at the moment. Without being able to prove that she was a noblewoman, it was very difficult for Angela to marry a nobleman. For example, her sister Felice, because she could not reveal her identity, the 14-year-old Felice had no place to live with her mother Lucrezia, so she had no choice but to marry the son of a rough country landlord in exchange for the landlord's family to take her and her mother in. Angela's current problem is the same as her sister Felice's, that is, she can't and dare not disclose her identity, and can't prove that she is a noble girl. Therefore, if Angela wants to get married now, it's difficult to marry a knight, let alone a baron. Although she was very beautiful, in this era, it was very difficult for a woman without noble birth to marry a noble. At most, a beautiful commoner girl could marry a wealthy non-noble businessman. Or, she could only become a lover of a noble and be kept by him. For Angela now, marrying a baron like Marin is definitely a stroke of luck. Moreover, Angela really likes this big boy who treats her very well. Marin not only cares about Angela's life, but also thoughtfully helps her forge the identity of a knight's daughter, clearing the identity obstacles for their union. Now, Marin and Angela, one is willing to marry, the other is willing to marry, it's really a love story. However, barons are generally rarely willing to marry knights' daughters. Only barons who are in a very bad situation will marry knights' daughters. For a baron like Marin who controls such a large territory and has so much money, let alone the daughter of a baron, he can also marry the daughter of some poor earls, as long as he is willing to pay a little interest. Therefore, Angela was now worried that the old Hoffman couple would prevent Marin from marrying her. For this reason, Angela, whose strategic talent began to awaken, began to try every possible way to please Mrs. Mary. As for the old Hoffman, not only was he difficult to deal with, but also, because of the difference between men and women, it was inconvenient to please him. At most, she could only give him some gifts. However, Angela was now living under someone else's roof, and she was spending all of Marin's money. How could she afford to buy a gift for old Hoffman? Therefore, Angela, who was smart, began to focus on Mrs. Mary. Moreover, Mrs. Mary was also a very gentle and beautiful woman, and was easier to talk to. Unlike old Hoffman, who had a stern face all day long, as if others owed him a lot of gold coins, Angela was a little afraid to approach him. So Angela quickly tried every possible way to enter the mode of pleasing the future mother-in-law. She kept following Lady Mary all day and told her the fairy tales that Marin had told her. Fortunately, these stories were brought by Marin's memories of his previous life. Otherwise, if she told the stories that Lady Mary had told the original Marin, it would be showing off one's skills before an expert. As Angela's strategy progressed, Lady Mary became entangled, because although she looked down on Angela's background, she was very satisfied with Angela as a person. So, she was entangled, should she agree to let this girl become her daughter-in-law? Chapter 166, Preparing to expand the army again. Marin rested for several days, and after he had rested enough, he began to think about taking over East Frisia. East Frisia usually has a small army, with only 1,000 of the most elite heavy-armored swordsmen stationed in the capital Emden, and a few hundred more stationed in Auric and other places. If they launched a surprise attack, even if the entire East Frisian state could mobilize 8,000 men, they would have to wait until the capital was captured. If the capital was captured and the Earl's family was captured, it would be meaningless even if the troops in other places were mobilized. Just like the Xuanwu Gate incident, Li Shimin only brought a small number of troops to ambush at the Xuanwu Gate, but after killing Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji, when Li Jianqing's men led 2,000 superior troops to besiege the Xuanwu Gate, Yu Qigong offered the heads of Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji, and Li Jianqing's troops immediately quickly collapsed. Therefore, as long as the current Count Eddisard I of East Frisia is captured or even killed, the East Frisian army that was originally loyal to him will be leaderless. Fighting desperately will lose its meaning. In fact, if Marin acted quickly, all parts of the county of East Frisia might not have enough time to gather troops, and no one would be willing to gather troops. Because, according to convention, the main generals of the county of East Frisia must be in the capital Emden. If the earl and the generals were all wiped out, who would mobilize the troops from all over the country? Therefore, as long as we take Emden by surprise as quickly as possible and capture Eddisad I and his heirs, then people from other regions will have no need to resist. Even if they want to resist, someone has to come forward to call on them. However, the siege of Emden required a lot of people. Although Marin now had 2,500 warriors and they were almost fully trained, this was not enough. Because the guards of Emden were the most elite 1,000 heavy armored swordsmen of the East Frisian state. Heavy armored swordsmen are powerful enough on the battlefield. If they are given tall and solid city walls to support them, who can deal with them? The Spanish phalanx of Marin's army could indeed restrain the heavily armored swordsmen wearing breastplate armor, but that was in the wild. The wild was bare and there was no cover, so even if they were wearing heavy armor, they were no match for the Spanish muskets. However, the heavily armored swordsmen wearing breastplate armor could rely on the city wall to avoid the musket bullets, so the advantage of the musket no longer existed. Moreover, the musketeers could not forcibly climb the city walls to fight. Therefore, the heavily armored swordsmen defending the city were very difficult to deal with. This was also one of the important reasons why the Duke of Saxony and 24 princes later failed to attack East Frisia. Therefore, it was far from enough to besiege Emden, which had 1,000 heavily armored swordsmen, with only 2,500 warriors. Generally speaking, besieging a fortified city required several times the number of soldiers as the defenders. Moreover, even if Emden was captured, there would be many other problems. The biggest problem was the Duke of Saxony, who occupied the Frisian Republic. Although the Duke of Saxony returned the 5,000 troops borrowed from his nephew after conquering the entire land of the Frisian Republic, he still left more than 5,000 troops in the Frisian region. Moreover, the Duke of Saxony is good at taking advantage. If he knew that Marin had captured Emden, he might take advantage of the situation and send troops to East Frisia. You know, Groningen is not far from East Frisia. Therefore, if Marin wanted to occupy East Frisia, in addition to capturing Emden, he also had to guard against the Duke of Saxony's army stationed in Groningen taking advantage of the situation and picking Marin's peaches. Marin had already suffered a loss once, and if he was picked the peach for the second time, he would be a fool. Therefore, while attacking East Frisia, Marin must also be prepared to guard against the Duke of Saxony taking advantage of him. Therefore, it is very important to have enough troops to scare the Duke of Saxony and stop him from seizing the fruits of victory. Fortunately, there is an EMS river between East Frisia and the Frisian Republic. After quickly taking Emden, we can send troops to defend the east bank of the EMS river to prevent the Duke of Saxony's army from crossing the river to seize territory. Marin thought about it and felt that the army should not be less than 5,000 people. Because the Duke of Saxony had more than 5,000 people in East Frisia. After conquering Emden, Marin's army could not escape unscathed, and there would be some casualties. But no matter what, there would still be more than 4,000 people. With so many people guarding the east bank of the EMS river, the Saxons, who were already at a disadvantage in terms of manpower and had to take the risk of crossing the river, would not be stupid enough to continue. Only by guarding against the Saxon army can Marin free up his hands to continue to attack other areas of East Frisia. Anyway, it is not too difficult to deal with these leaderless people. But it is not so easy to feed so many troops. You know, a veteran mercenary has a daily salary of 3 pfennigs, a novice has a daily salary of 2 pfennigs, which is 18.25 gold coins a year. Recruiting 5,000 people will cost 91,250 gold coins a year. This is just the salary expenses. In addition, Marin must also reimburse the maintenance costs of weapons and armor. In addition, the biggest expense is the training of the musketeers. Just practicing shooting every day will cost a lot of gunpowder. However, considering the money he got back from Venice and the annual profit of Yenching, Marin regained his confidence. He gritted his teeth and decided to expand the army by 4,500 people to 7,000 people. An army of 7,000 is enough to capture East Frisia, and it can also deter the army of the Duke of Saxony in the Frisian region and prevent them from taking advantage of the situation. So, Marin issued an order, ordering Schwartz to take people out to recruit 4,500 mercenaries. Moreover, Marin was not very willing to hire old mercenaries. Although such mercenaries were able to fight, many bad habits of the old army were difficult to change and difficult to train. Moreover, these old soldiers were hard to fool. Only those who were new to the mercenary industry were easier to fool and less likely to betray. As long as Marin focused on the education of loyalty when brainwashing them, it would be fine. But it would take a long time to recruit 4,500 people, because Marin had his own standards for selecting soldiers, and he would not accept just any bad person. Moreover, once all the people are recruited, they will have to train for a long time, at least 3 or 4 months, before they can be put into battle. Therefore, Marin is not in a hurry now, and there is no point in being anxious. Therefore, after the order was issued, Marin waited for the newcomers to be hired, and then trained to become veterans with good military skills, and then put them into battle to take over East Frisia. This process would take several months. Chapter 167 Sending Out Spies. The city of Emden is a commercial port at the mouth of the Ems River. Although it is not a Hanseatic commercial city, it is still very prosperous because of its important location. Because the Ems River is a long river of 371 kilometers, in Europe, and even in later times, its navigable distance is 116 kilometers. You have to know that it was later times, and the displacement of shipping ships was generally at the level of several thousand tons. In the Middle Ages, small boats of dozens of tons dared to be called shipping. Therefore, in this era, the navigable distance of the Ems River is about 200 kilometers long. What does 200 kilometers mean? In this era of numerous feudal states, 200 kilometers may pass through the borders of several feudal states. Emden is located at the mouth of the Ems River and is considered an important entrepot for German trade with overseas countries. For example, Emden is also an important entrepot for British salt imports and an important import port for British woolen cloth. Although it is far inferior to Hanseatic cities such as Bremen and Hamburg, compared with ordinary cities, Emden is relatively prosperous. The prosperous port also brought a lot of tax revenue to Emden. With the tax revenue, there was naturally money to strengthen the city walls. Therefore, the walls of Emden were tall and strong, making them difficult to capture, which was one of the important reasons why the Saxon coalition forces were unable to capture the city. In fact, Emden belonged to the Abdina family, one of the 13 tribes of East Frisia in the 14th century. However, because Emden was too prosperous, it attracted covetousness. Therefore, after the Uckner family usurped the throne, they also seized it. The original home of the Uckner family was in Leer County, which was the most developed agricultural area in East Frisia. Therefore, the Uckner family has always been relatively powerful. Relying on the developed agriculture, the Uckner family was able to overthrow the Bloch family and seize the rich financial and tax-rich Emden as the new capital. However, the Sexner family, who had been living in the small town of Norden by the North Sea, rose to prominence and replaced the Uckner family, becoming the new ruler of East Frisia. The Sexner family also envied the prosperity of Emden, and still set up the capital here to enjoy the finances and prosperity here. In fact, the Sexner family was still quite prestigious in East Frisia. At least, they were much better than the rebellious Uckner family. At the beginning, they were able to seize East Frisia because they took advantage of the dissatisfaction of other tribes with the rebellious Uckner family and seized power. After decades of operation, Emden is now impregnable and difficult to conquer. For example, in the War of 1516, the Duke of Saxony gathered more than 10,000 troops but still failed to conquer Emden. Marin did not think he had horns on his head. In the wild, he was confident that his Spanish phalanx could beat the East Frisian army. But when besieging the strong city wall, Marin had no confidence at all. For this reason, he could only think of a strange trick, otherwise it would be difficult to quickly conquer Emden. At this time, Marin remembered the fall of Groningen. It seemed that the merchant named Meyer, with 260 guards, wearing armor, stormed the gate of Groningen. A fortress is easiest to breach from the inside. That's a good idea indeed. However, it is very difficult to replicate Meyer's miracle. Because Groningen is much more prosperous than Emden, and there are so many businessmen, so they can gather so many bodyguards. In Emden, it is difficult to do so. Moreover, with the lesson of Groningen, Edisad I will definitely make targeted defenses. Therefore, it will not work to copy and use this method. Therefore, Marin decided to modify the specific details. Marin had watched war films such as landmine warfare and tunnel warfare since he was a child, and he liked the plots in them very much. Most of the city walls in Europe are made of stone, which are very strong and cannot be blown down by ordinary artillery. It is also difficult to learn from the Taiping heavenly kingdoms, carrying a coffin, to blow up the city walls. This is because the walls that the Taiping army blew up were basically made of bricks, which are not as strong as those made of stone. So, digging a tunnel is a good choice. Of course, the walls of Europe are tall and their foundations are deep, so digging tunnels is also a very troublesome and laborious task, because the tunnels need to be dug very deep and the workload is too large. However, Marin was not in a hurry to attack Emden, so he did not need to dig a tunnel under the city wall in a short time. According to Marin's estimation, he had at least half a year to prepare. And during this time, he could use it to secretly dig tunnels. Therefore, Marin decided to send a group of people to rent a courtyard outside Emden city, and then arrange for people to secretly dig a tunnel leading to the city every day. When the tunnel is almost completed, send people to buy a house in the city and open the tunnel entrance inside the house. When Marin officially leads his troops to attack the city, he can directly send an army to seize the city gate from the inside while the East Frisian army is not paying attention, and then let the army enter the city. Of course, this sneak attack must have happened at night. Moreover, Marin's main force would definitely not attack the city openly. Under such circumstances, the East Frisians would definitely not deliberately block the city gate with stones or other objects inside the city, because they did not expect anyone to attack them. Therefore, the small force that entered the city through the tunnel only needed to seize the city gate, then open the bolt from the inside and open the city gate to allow the large army to enter the city. Of course, before entering the city, Marin also planned to send spies to get the distribution map of the army's stationing and deployment in the city, so that Marin's army could focus on attacking, intercepting, and ensure that the Earl's family could be captured quickly. For this purpose, Marin specially sent 2 teams of spies to Emden. One team was in the city, which was a professional spy responsible for gathering information and buying a house inside the city wall as the entrance to the tunnel. The other team, except for the leader, was mainly composed of well diggers. Under the leadership of the leader, they were responsible for digging tunnels from the yard purchased outside the city wall to the inside of the city wall. They didn't need to dig fast, as long as they could dig through it within half a year. Moreover, the operation of digging tunnels had to be kept secret. Therefore, they needed to quietly transport the excavated soil in batches in the middle of the night to avoid being discovered by the East Frisian army. Otherwise, all their efforts would fail. As long as this tunnel is opened, then Marin's army can attack the city at the fastest speed. Then, relying on superior forces and tactics, they can destroy the defenders and capture the entire family of Edis Ad I.